Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And recently, I've come across a lot of great commenters watching these videos who are newer to comics, and I'm so excited. If that's you, welcome to the wonderful world of comics. I know for me, when I first started reading, it was very exciting, but also a bit daunting knowing where to start. So today I've prepared a quick list of 5 great DC comics for new readers. These are all pretty contemporary or modern choices, and I tried to select books that maybe not everyone is picking for lists like these. Whether you're a brand new comic book fan or a seasoned veteran, I hope you enjoy my list. Before we get started though, I do want to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I hope you'd consider checking out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. First up on our list today, we're going to be talking about the Justice League New 52 Omnibus Volume 1. This is predominantly written by Geoff, a seasoned veteran over at DC Comics. For me, this is a fantastic book to read for new comic book readers, especially if you're trying to get into DC. So the New 52, which you can see in the title here, was an era of DC Comics that occurred, 2009-ish, give or take a year. But that was right around when I started collecting my own comics, maybe closer to 2012 now that I think about it, 2011? Anyway, it came out a little while ago, but it was a kind of soft reboot for a lot of these long-standing DC books. They all went back to an issue 1, and all of these writers, artists, they made all of these books very accessible to a whole new generation of readers. I personally really liked that because, like I said, when I first started reading, I was so excited to check out some classics, but I was eager to see new things as well, but I didn't know where to jump in. I didn't know what I would need to read, the kind of prerequisite reading, so to speak, but the New 52 was such a novel approach where I could just jump right in and they would fill in all the gaps I needed. Why I suggest this run in particular, especially if you want to start comics and DC Comics in particular, is that this is the Justice League. This is the premier team of superheroes at DC Comics, and this incarnation will introduce you to so many of the just mainstream lineup for DC Comics. Of course, we have Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash, and more like Aquaman and Cyborg. And as you get further into this run, you're introduced to even more supporting heroes and a good handful of mainstream DC Comics villains. Not only is this book great in its own right, there's so many fun, just action-centric story arcs in this book. The character interactions are a joy, and the whole thing to me reads like a summer blockbuster in comic book form. But again, it's really a good way to introduce you to a lot of these main hitters over at DC. Starting with a really accessible superhero team book like this might also give you an appreciation for individual characters within the team to pursue for further reading. What I mean by that is you might never have picked up a Green Lantern comic, but you might pick up Justice League and you notice that Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, is a really cool character you want to know more about. All of a sudden you have a whole new character and property comic book title to pursue after reading this. That's why I wanted to suggest this book when I think about great books for new readers. Like I said, New 52 is a great starting point because you don't need to know a ton. They fill you in on anything you'd need to know, and you have that new issue 1 to just jump on board. And also, it introduces you to all these characters, and you can maybe spin off and pursue other individual characters from this point on. Anyway, really fun. I'm still making my way through this run. The entire Justice League New 52, for the most part, is collected across a 2-volume omnibus set. This is the first one, and wow, it is a lot of fun so far. Next on the list, I'm going to be talking about Superman Volume 1 Supercorp by Joshua Williamson. Yes, this is a Volume 1 for Superman for this creator's run, and it's actually the start of a new era called the Dawn of DC. Similar to the New 52, but not as aggressive. It's not a full reboot or anything like that, but I think that the creators are really trying to make it easy to on-ramp to a mainstream ongoing comic book title. For me, I actually just picked up this book at the time of the recording. This came out really recently, but for me, it is one of the most fun places to read a very modern contemporary Superman story. We have Superman back in Metropolis, saving the day. Lois Lane is kind of overseeing the Daily Planet newspaper. We have Lex Luthor really prominent in this story, even though he actually is behind bars in prison. We have a couple notable villain appearances, a larger conspiracy is introduced, and the art throughout it is absolutely gorgeous. Unlike the Omnibus edition before it, which is an oversized hardcover that collects a pretty substantial amount of issues, this is a standard size. What that means is it's the size of like kind of just the floppy single issue comic books you might see at a comic book shop, just with the hardcover around it. It collects maybe the first 5-6 issues of the run, your first kind of story arc, or so to speak, but I just think it's a really fun place to start Superman. Of course, there are so many great Superman stories, and I debated putting on a kind of Superman origin retelling graphic novel, but I've recommended those in other videos on where to start comics, where to start DC and Superman, so I thought I'd mix up my list, do something fresh that I still think is really great for new readers out there. Why I put an ongoing current Superman title specifically as well is because sometimes, while it is fun to go back and read classic comic book storylines or character runs, it is also really fun to read something that's still coming out on the shelves. That way, whether you collect collected editions like myself here, or you want to go get those single individual issues, you can be kind of rest assured that you're reading something current that people are talking about. It's in the cultural zeitgeist, in this kind of subculture, comic book culture. Again, I've done other lists on where to start reading for new readers, and I've included more classic or quintessential works. This list, again, is great for new readers, but I try to pick more contemporary choices and things that are maybe, again, not in everyone's list. But I just think that this is a really fun start to a Superman run. It doesn't ask you to know very much. I think even if you're culturally aware of Superman, maybe you've seen one of his movies or him show up in an animated show, or you're just kind of vaguely aware this is kind of the most iconic superhero, you know really enough to enjoy this storyline. But I do think it rewards longer term fans of this franchise, and there's a lot of really fun stuff happening here. Joshua Williamson is a truly adept writer at this point, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for this title. And hey, if you're watching this video and you have yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. I'm always doing list videos like this for newer and more seasoned readers. I'm doing comic book reviews, unboxings, and more. Anyway, thank you so much for considering. Let's keep going with today's list. Next up on my recommendations list, Batman the Knight by Chip Zdarsky and Carmine Di Giandomenico. This is a really fun maxi series that DC Comics put out within the last couple years. It's not overly long. This is another standard size hardcover, but it contains the entire mini-series, maxi series here. What I mean by that is it really just collects the whole just storyline that these creators put out. I really, really love it. What this is it's actually, you can think of it like a graphic novel, and it basically contains Bruce Wayne, Batman, his adolescence and coming of age. We've seen a lot of Batman origin stories, whether in film, animation, or of course the comic books, and we see, of course, a lot of great Batman content as well. But in my mind and in many readers' minds, there's always been this real missing piece. We haven't had a ton of just dedicated story arcs or straight up graphic novels like this that include that period of what happened in adolescence, what happened after his origin where his parents were gunned down in that alley, but before he donned the cape and cowl of Batman. Well, this series really explores that. This is proto-Batman. This is Batman before the cape. This is where he's basically traveling the world and gaining all the skills he needs to become the Dark Knight of Gotham. I really, really like this. And I know for DC Comics, I wanted to recommend, of course, a Batman book to a new reader. And this is another contemporary choice that I fully enjoyed. I absolutely love this title. Chip Zdarsky is admittedly one of my favorite current comic book writers. I've loved what he's done on Daredevil. I've loved his Howard the Duck run. He did a Marvel 2-in-1 maxi series that followed some of the Fantastic Four I also greatly enjoyed. And he's also one of the current Batman writers. So really enjoy this creator. Really, really incredible. But this story here, Batman the Knight, I think is something truly special. And while it is a very contemporary choice, I do think it's going to go down as something of a modern classic. I also think that this is not only an accessible book to new readers, it is kind of like an origin story for Batman in a way, but it takes a really different approach, it has a unique perspective to it, and it just really works for me. No, you don't see a lot of Batman in his actual Batman garb, but you get to see Bruce Wayne, who is every inch the man who will be Batman. I think that this is so much fun. This is something I think that there are still people talking about, so it does feel fresh, it does feel modern, and I just think it's fun. Another great place to start reading Batman in my mind is something like Batman Year One by Frank Miller. That's more of a quintessential Batman starting place in my mind. Another one I could recommend, Batman The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. That's a story set in the early career of Batman, and it introduces you to a ton of Batman's main villains and some of his supporting cast. It's a straight up detective story that's a lot of fun. But again, for the purposes of today's video, I'm gonna go with Batman the Knight. Happy reading. Next on our list, we're going to be looking at another New 52 title. That's right, we're going to be checking out The Flash, Volume 1, Move Forward by Francis Manapul and Brian Baccaletto. The Scarlet Speedster of Central City is, of course, a mainstay in DC's comic book canon. I love The Flash, and he has had so many incredible comic runs. I could think of things like Mark Waid and Geoff Johns and so many more. But for the sake of this video, I wanted to recommend another New 52 title. Like the Justice League one I mentioned earlier, I think that the New 52 is just a fantastic place to start reading so many of the DC characters because it's just so very accessible. Another thing to note when you start The Flash, there have been a couple of speedsters that carry that moniker. The two most prolific or iconic, I would say though, are Barry Allen and Wally West. Wally West was the first Kid Flash and the young protege of Barry Allen. Barry Allen is the kind of dawn of the Silver Age of Comics Flash. He's the one that gets lightning striked with the chemicals and becomes, like I said, the Scarlet Speedster. This run actually follows predominantly Barry Allen's Flash. This is one of his first returns to the main title. He'd been around, but he was missing for a while. But anyway, this is really fun. It resets him, and it kind of gives him a whole new cast of characters to play with. But I really like it. And I think something novel about this run as well is that the art is really, really interesting. There's a lot of really creative and dynamic choices for the artwork. There's times where it feels almost impressionistic or just really stylized in a way that's quite gorgeous. The art is really not straightforward, and I really love it about that. There is truly experimentation in the panel layout, and it really sets itself apart. You don't see a book mapped quite like this, and I really enjoy that. Like some of my other entries in this video, this is only the first handful of issues of this run, but it gives you kind of that first main story arc, but it also sets the stage for the rest of this Francis Manapul run on Flash. Again, a couple other great Flash stories you could read are the stories by Geoff Johns and Mark Waid that both predominantly follow the Wally West Flash, but for Barry Allen, this is actually one of my favorite spots to start reading. This is one of the earliest Flash comics I had the opportunity to read, and I think that while it's maybe not the best Flash run out there, I do think it gets passed over, maybe unfairly. But you could see for yourself, if you enjoy the art and you think that Barry Allen's Flash is something you want to engage in, I think that this could be a really novel starting point. I think something else about Flash in general I enjoy is that he's another one like Superman that is kind of a paragon of integrity and moral value, and he's just a good-natured, squeaky clean kind of hero, and that's definitely on full display here with Barry Allen in the New 52 Flash. Definitely recommend it. Like I said, I think it's a great starting point for new readers, and you can still find these collections for fairly cheap. Okay, last but certainly not least on my list today of 5 great DC books for new readers, we're going to be talking about Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chiang. This is part of DC Comics' Black Label imprint. That imprint is really designed for older, more mature readers, and sometimes the stories here are outside of the main continuity or canon for DC Comics, but they're just great stories. This is a graphic novel that is in an oversized format that looks very square and boxy, as you can see. It's a real prestige format I've seen utilized more recently, and it definitely showcases the art in a really beautiful way. Cliff Chiang, I first got familiar with. He actually did the art for a Wonder Woman run in New 52 with a writer named Brian Azzarello. I could also really recommend if you're looking for a great place to start Wonder Woman. But I've gone on to see him do art in a few other things, but he's both artist and writer for Catwoman Lonely City, and I just think it's fantastic. The story itself is set in a dystopian future Gotham, where Selina Kyle, the Catwoman, has been imprisoned for about a decade or so. This story starts as she's released from jail and is trying to reintegrate into society and pick up kind of the last mission Batman gave her. There's a lot of fun mystery and intrigue here, a kind of fish out of water feel to a lot of it, a lot of great commentary on aging and identity, and overall it's just really beautiful to look at. Chiang's art is absolutely incredible, the colors pop right out of the page. The reason I recommended this for new readers, unlike the rest of the entries in this video, which are basically comic book runs, ongoing titles, this is a true kind of graphic novel. I think the only one close to this was something like Batman the Knight, but even that went on for a good handful of issues in that collection. But this is only about 4 issues, I think, 3 or 4 issues, but it's a tight, self-contained graphic novel. And again, I guess that is kind of like The Knight. The Knight's just a few more issues. But again, you don't really need to know much at all about DC continuity, as this is a bit outside of the continuity. And why I think this is fun is that comics are so much more, even DC Comics, are so much more than these ongoing, never-ending stories and just titles, the issue numbers that go up to 1,000. They can be also these really tight miniseries, these graphic novels, maybe off the beaten path. I chose Catwoman as well. I think she's culturally well known, but she's not like Batman or Superman, where they're like the main flagship heroes for this whole, comic publisher. But it's just a secondary character, maybe a great primary character in her own right, admittedly, but kind of off the beaten path a little bit, but a great standalone story. Why I think graphic novels and miniseries like this are fun as well is because you can kind of just come, enjoy it, and get out. It's a one and done kind of story. You don't have to have a heavy investment. You can just enjoy one single graphic novel and just like your experience. So if you don't want to get too invested in DC Comics right away, it might be worth seeking out something like this, which is closer to a small self-contained graphic novel. At any rate, I thought this was really, really fun, and I thought it was worth recommending to a whole batch of new readers out there. Hopefully, if you're watching this is something you might consider. I thought it was really worthwhile. And that's going to wrap up our 5 great DC comics for new readers. Like I said, I tried to pick more contemporary choices that maybe aren't the top shelf main go-to picks in so many other videos, including some of my older videos for new readers. I like to mix up these lists, but you know what? One of the things I'd really love, especially if you're a more seasoned comic book fan that you've watched this video as well, I'd love to hear your recommendations in the comments. As a new reader, what are maybe some DC comics you consider essential reads or things that you think anyone would really enjoy? Or just about anyone. I know it's super subjective, obviously. But I'd love the comment section to be a treasure trove of great recommendations for those that maybe are seeking this video just starting in the comic book hobby. I want to make our channel as accessible as possible for both seasoned and new readers alike, so I think that would be a huge help in the comments section. DC Comics is a great comic book publisher, of course, with a long and treasured history, so I'd love to get those recommendations. And if you are a new or prospective comic book reader, again, just welcome. Hopefully we find a comic that's great for you and you enjoy this hobby as I have. At any rate, thank you all again so much for watching. This was really a fun list to prepare. I love making content for new readers, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, and maybe check out another on your way out. Thanks so much, and have a good one.